in my school, I know, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Good evening, it's 7 o'clock. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education on Monday, September 14th, 2020. If you would please join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I know. Way too quiet without anybody here. I know. All right. So it looks like the first thing we have this evening is West Virginia School Service Personnel Day. And we have here a proclamation from Governor Jim Justice. And if you bear with me, I'll read through it. Whereas school service personnel are involved in nearly every aspect of education by maintaining buildings and grounds, preparing and serving meals, keeping school facilities clean and orderly, and assisting in the classroom, as well as providing administrative support functions, safe transportation, and many other specialized services. And whereas school service personnel are instrumental in West Virginia's responsibility to educate all students, and whereas these dedicated individuals serve the children of West Virginia in our public education system and have an important role of non-instructional service to the educational system, and whereas fitting, we recognize the outstanding work these individuals do for the state, their communities, and the students. Now be it resolved that Governor Justice of the great state of West Virginia do hereby proclaim September 23rd as West Virginia School Service Personnel Day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure we get your audio too. Okay. The mask, I've learned that I feel like I can't hear because the mask is on. So forgive me when I talk louder. I just want to thank you for this and the governor. I have to say, though, that I think the service personnel in Jefferson County are the awesome group. They stepped up to the plate. The last 6 months have not been the best for us, but like most, if not all the staff, we want to make sure the kids are safe, they're secure, and they're healthy, let alone be fed. These are times we all are learning how to deal with. I don't think anybody in this room is old enough to know how bad it has been in the past, mega years ago when they wore masks again, for different reasons. But I feel that Jefferson County Schools stepped up to the plate. Yeah, we have some little bumps in the road we've had to deal with, but you know what? We're going to get through these. We're going to get through these because we care about our students. And whether it's getting the meals out to them on the bus this past summer, last 6 months really, or calling them on the phone and asking them if they need anything, are they okay? Letting them know that we love them, that we support them. The students and their parents deep down know that Jefferson County Schools are there for them. And service personnel has done so much to show and help prepare these kids for what is happening the best way they knew how. We all know how. Whether it's kids at virtual or kids in the building, we want to make sure they know that we care about them. We want them back in the building. We want to see their smiling faces, their laughter, and we don't want them to see a mask. But that's down the road. And until that happens, we will always be there for them. And I believe 100% that service personnel has done everything they possibly can to make Jefferson County students feel safe, secure, and have what they need. And we will continue to do that. I have seen the fear, the frustration, the tears of all the staff, not just service personnel, but teachers as well, because we are all learning this new thing, that we're in now. And I don't want any student or any staff member to feel that they're not important and they're not worthy, because they are. We will continue to do that. I know you all will as well. And I am happy to have I can't even talk. September 23rd as Service Personnel Day. And I know that it's not just service personnel, but it's everyone. Thank you, and we will continue to make this the best year we possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been rough, but I think we'll get there. So if you need anything, let us know. We'll do our best.
Thank you
And-
very
and
much.
while she's here, I have to give kudos to Terry. We've been meeting once a week, every week for months now, for Zoom, trying to make this work for everybody and getting feedback from them. And I have to say, as I know you take your own hits as a rep, you've been a great partner, and you've been a great voice for service personnel, and it's helped us do things better than we would have without your voice and without your input, so thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate all your things that you've done, your inputs. And like Dr. Gibson said, we have talked many a times and kind of used each other's shoulder on many occasions. And we will continue to do that if it's what we have to do to make this better. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna
Thank
sneak
you.
out. Bye-bye. Y'all have a good evening.
All right, Madam Superintendent, reentry review.
Okay, everyone on the call is aware that we're in for our first week. We've had at elementary our classes back in on site. At secondary, we've had our classes back in on site and run our full A schedule. This week we're running our full B schedule, with a subsequent start for AB alternating days. I appreciate everyone's feedback and suggestions. On-site has gone very well. Our notification system has worked quite well. We've had tested more than a dozen of our employees. All of them have come back negative thus far. That will likely not always be the case, but to date it has been. Our nursing staff, as we've noted, we contracted out additional nursing staff so that we had full-time nursing at all of our locations. School nutrition, as Ms. Odell referred to, are doing an absolutely amazing job. Not only did they distribute more than 750,000 meals in the pandemic, they're now doing that both on-site and off-site for our virtual families. The USDA declared that all students could now receive free and reduced lunch. And so we are preparing a significant number of meals, and then we're delivering them in multiple different venues with the same staff. So kudos to the cooks. I also have to give a shout out to the cooks. In particular, my son had his first day on site at Charlestown Middle School last week, and when he came home, the thing that he was the most happy and excited about was getting to eat lunch at school. And his remark was that all of the cooks there remembered everyone from last time and asked them, did you get a new baseball bat? How was your summer? I missed you. Wow, look how tall you are. You must have gotten a haircut. And he was impressed. And 13-year-olds are hard to impress. So again, service staff are typically the first ones that our students see and the last ones that they see often, and the ones that they see in their moments of freedom and socialization, so they can have pretty significant impact. Service staff that we are working to get some additional support are our custodial staff. We do not have a large number of custodial subs. And we've explored a couple of different options. Right now, we do have the capacity when we absolutely cannot find a sub to contract out those services. We are doing everything that we can not to do that. We want to pay our own people first. So Amy Loring and her staff have been working on a process based on seniority for our own custodians to work overtime by picking up the extra jobs from other folks when we aren't able to fill those positions, because we'd always rather pay our own folks and pay them more. If we have to spend the money, we want to spend it on Jefferson staff. We have, as you know, we added teaching staff. We're going to have some discussion in the HR consent agenda today about some additional staff movement, including bringing in interventionists, librarians, instructional coaches to teach classes to lower our on-site numbers, all of which have been successful, and that our on-site classes have gone very, very well. As you also know, if you have a child in virtual and you received a communication from me last week, we have had more of a struggle with our virtual program. In some ways that's to be expected, because on site, no matter how different it is, everyone's dropped their child off at school, and it's a matter of you drop them off and we take care of it from there. The difference with virtual is it's happening in 3,000 different locations with thousands of people with very different levels of understanding of technology and what it's capable of and how it works. So a massive part of the effort has been, quite frankly, partnering with and educating parents with a limited technology staff for that purpose. One of the ones that we wanted to talk about was in terms of devices. To date, we have handed out 1,429 Chromebooks to students. The students who selected virtual and said they did not have a device and needed one, all of those have been covered, with the exception of people who did not come and pick them up on the pickup days. We've set up follow-up pickup days. Every school has a bin of computers set aside for folks who haven't picked their initial ones up. We do have requests from folks who initially told us they didn't need a device and then their circumstances changed. We also have currently sitting in our queue. When I say queue, I mean that we have over 2,240, actually, if we add the ones from the grant, 3,900 plus computers that are on order, and we're just waiting to receive them. The oldest one's dating back to having placed those in April. So as you know, it's simply taking a long supply chain. So we're being very strategic about giving devices to those with the greatest need, which are virtual families who have no devices. And as soon as all of these back orders come in, which we quite frankly do not have control over, I know that's frustrating for people, then we'll be able to keep moving to the next phase. Regardless of the devices, we have put up the hotspots at the schools. We also have our mobile hotspots out. We've been running those all last week and getting feedback from parents about the locations and about the range, how those are working, where we need to situate them at. So we're trying different places for them to see what has the best usage. We know it's going to take some time for people to get to know the schedule. We published it out before the start of school, but not everyone accesses our website. So you know, we'll continue to play with that as we have more folks, utilize it. We also are, working on, continuing to work on our staff development and our training, including both the video support for parents. So we shifted our website to have a separate page just for Jefferson Virtual Academy, because parents were sort of getting lost in it's either a case of we give you too much information, or we don't give you enough information, or we give it and nobody can tell where it's at. It's always a balance. But so we created a separate big landing page for virtual, so that parents could find the videos and the resources on there. And we moved the social, emotional, and COVID resources on there for virtual parents, because we have videos in English and in Spanish, and checklists for parents, and activities to support children's social, emotional health and connection while they're on virtual. And we found that parents weren't accessing that because they couldn't navigate to it well. So as we discover, or as any of you get feedback about resources that we do or don't have, people giving us feedback helps. We turn around and change what we're doing if we know that it would help someone. I had a parent email me last week and say, you know, if you just made one big calendar and put it up with your others of A day, B days, that would help me a lot. Like, I could see the school calendar, and then the schools have these little A day, B days, but it's a little confusing for me. So we created an A day, B day calendar and put it up on our website. So, you know, I understand when people are frustrated because this hasn't met every expectation that they had, hasn't met every expectation that I would have had, but that's not going to be the case. But it's very helpful if you come and say this isn't what's working. You may or may not have an idea of how to fix it, but if you do, tell us, and you're making it better for someone else, which I deeply appreciate. So week 2, actually day 5 today, day 5. So have not achieved perfection yet, still working on that. But thank you.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely, ma'am.
And we may not know the answer yet, because I know that they've been working like crazy trying to get this all straightened out. But we've got some pretty, not panicky students and parents, but concerned students and parents, that children do not have complete high school schedules. Like, they might be missing 3rd, 5th, and 6th period, or whatever those classes might be.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, they're not absent, they're not missing work, it'll all work out. But do we have a time frame of when those schedules might be?
If there is anyone who is missing a part of their schedule, then they can email me, and we'll check through them. Right now, everyone has a schedule. The issue that we have is we still have, like any other schedule, shakeout only times 10 right now. They're running into conflicts. You know, I'm getting emails from parents who say, but my daughter doesn't want business class. My daughter wants to take biology. Well, your daughter also has a dual enrollment class over at Shepherd, because we promised parents, and we still have, AP classes, dual enrollment classes, regular classes, honors classes. But if someone absolutely doesn't, if they have their schedule and they're in a panic, they need to contact us. And when I say contact us, please don't call your school counselor. Part of the problem is the school counselors are furiously doing schedules, and the phone's ringing off the hooks at the schedule office, so they keep picking up the phone and talking one individual parent through it for 15 minutes and putting it back down, and the phone rings back again. So they're not putting in schedules, because that's what they're doing. So we're trying to get them some extra scheduling assistance. The thing that would be the most useful, and I just talked myself through this, I'm sorry.
That's
But
okay.
the thing that would be the most useful is we have on Jefferson Virtual Academy, when you go there on the left and you click on that, you know, ask a question, concern, or suggestion, when they do that, that email comes directly to me and copies to the board so that we're all aware. So if I see that you don't have a schedule, and we've had several of those, then that's my trigger. I'm with the principal and I say, hey, I've got, this kid in this situation, and they explain to me what's going on, and we'll work through it one at a time. And I'll email that parent back. If they put their phone number in there, I'll call them. Well, just to help keep them aware that we're not gonna harm their child, and thank them for their patience.
Okay, yeah, I mean, if there was one place that we could point them in that direction, I think that would be incredibly helpful, just because of the fact that, like you said, the guidance departments, I mean, they're going 60 miles an hour right now. And, so we need to get these parents and students taken care of, but
Yes, ma'am.
that's the best approach? Is
Yes,
to
ma'am.
email that? Okay.
Absolutely, yes ma'am. That way I will have it in writing and know what I'm looking for and where they're at in the queue.
Perfect.
They basically have an order of selection. Seniors have to go first for you to be able to get all of your credits. They're resolving all of those conflicts first, then juniors. I have to say, if you have a freshman and they only have 4 of their classes and they had 2 conflicts, you are not the highest priority. And that's, I love you, I love your kids. I love all your kids, but right now, the seniors and the juniors.
Right,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
I just would want to add one comment, because I know it has been frustrating. I know I have been frustrated for some of the parents that I have seen. I can speak personally for my own child who is at home, who, has to be at home for medical reasons. But I will say this, she has both the online Jefferson County Edition, Virtual Academy, and has a couple of West Virginia Department of Education classes. And I will say this, the difference is night and day. I'm really proud of, in this much time, what has been accomplished as far as the touching and of the student to teacher opportunity, which we had talked about of, there is a lot of counties are just here, take WVDE, we're starting remote, that's what you get. And, as Mr. Dilly and yourself and we all had talked about, it was important for us that our own teachers touch our own students. And now having walked through this a little bit, I know it's day 5, but even just the beginning experience of, this is a teacher, I get a little video, I get to meet my teacher, I have my beginning Zoom or Meet Teams class, and I see that person, they're talking to me, I can ask questions, it's a real live person, where you're not getting that with WVDE opportunity. It's much more like a college-based class because you're responsible for however fast you want to do those, those assignments, which is fine. So I think there's pros and cons to both, but that has been done, I think, very, very well. And I think long-term, as we move into the future of education, which, whether it's a snow day or a sick day or, who knows, a pandemic, having that option, and I know Mr. Dilly talked about that, looking at this, we're trying to look at this as a long-term, not the short-term. That if we want to build an education system where we actually here in Jefferson County, maybe we can be an alternative to a WVDE because we have that stuff built into our own platforms. I just want to say it is good. I think it's been good. I mean, yes, we do have a long way to go. I'm not going to say we don't. But I do think that it has been a good experience. And I'm glad that I'm experiencing it so I can at least know what that feels like for that end as well. So I just want to say thank you to, Mr. Dilly and to all the staff, to you as well, for I know it has been a ridiculous undertaking. And yes, we all want it to be so much better and right now. I'm the same way. I want it right now. So, the speed at which we move, obviously we need to get better, but I think it started off, so far the first experience has been good in that regard. So, anyway.
I'm heartened by the fact that it is getting better every day. Like if it was still churning and we just weren't making progress and it was like we fundamentally got this wrong, I would be a lot more worried, and I still am worried a lot. But just because it doesn't happen fast enough.
Right.
But it does. It's just not feeling like you ever have enough time and staff to do it as fast as you want.
Right.
So thank you for that.
All right. Moving on to number 4, do you have any other comments this evening?
Oh, no ma'am, thank you for asking. I'm just happy to be back in school.
All right, approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the regular board meeting held August 24th, 2020, and the special board meeting held September 4th, 2020, and emergency board meeting held September 4th, 2020?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Is there a second?
Almost said Ogden, so moved, like I was
Second on the
online.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you very much. Citizens' comments, we didn't have any this evening. All right, consent agenda? Are there any?
Yes, ma'am, there are. I'm gonna have Miss Loring talk about change on there, and then I wanna introduce someone. Ms. Loring?
Okay. The change that we have this evening on the agenda, the HR consent agenda, is to remove position 51 and 52 from the list to request a position creation. We actually approved back in the spring through the budget process and submitting position creations to you as a result, a kindergarten position and an ECAT, which is the kindergarten teacher's assistant at Page Jackson Elementary. And we held off posting officially and filling that position because we wanted to pay particular attention to the numbers to make sure that they truly fleshed out with the projections to add one. And we did not get to those projections. So we did not add the kindergarten teacher and the ECAT at Page Jackson. So we can realign that to Shepherdstown Elementary to cover their very much unexpected growth in kindergarten at that school, where their numbers absolutely do require a kindergarten teacher and an ECAT addition.
And in terms of introduction, I know that on this call is Miss Melissa O'Brien, who I will be recommending as the new assistant principal at Wildwood Middle School. Ms. O'Brien comes to us with 18 years of experience in education and is a national board certified teacher, which we always love that level of credentialing and that instructional expertise. She's been a mentor, a curriculum writer, a professor, a teacher, principal intern. She is licensed to teach in 3 separate states. Thank you for choosing the best of them. Nice. She has a bachelor's degree in English from Penn State University State College, a master's from Roosevelt University, and a second master's from DePaul University in school administration. So if you'd like to say hello, Ms. O'Brien, we welcome seeing your smiling face and hearing from you.
Hi, it's nice to meet you all and see you all, even though it's from a distance. You made me sound so good, I don't know what else to say. I'm very excited to join Wildwood Middle School and Jennifer Moss and Jody Brock. And I'm just really excited if given the opportunity. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Welcome. All right.
Don't know what else to say.
You're good. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us.
Oh, no problem. I'm excited.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Amy.
And Ms. Loring, I have a quick question on the superintendent approval, number 13. There's a TBD date. Do we have an actual date to put in there?
13, oh yes. We are actually working on that transition and should have an update soon. One of the things that we've tried to do and what our practice is because Ms. Thomas is moving from a classroom position. We try to make sure that those students have a person who is there to deliver those services before we move them from the classroom.
We always
Okay.
fill the positions closest to the kids first.
We make sure we're being responsible there.
No, thank you. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't something that we needed to fill in there. All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cable.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
There was another one, it didn't list a school, the other position that we're looking for, at Drisswood. I'm assuming that has to do with our numbers because of, the virtual academy, but I just wanna clarify that.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that as well as their numbers increased in 4th grade. So without virtual, we would still have numbers that jump them over the threshold for 2 teachers and would need to have that 3rd.
Okay, and how are we doing on numbers in general then? How do we, where do we stand right now with our student population? Do we have any schools that have gone way up, schools that are going way down? I know we don't get our first count on enrollment till October.
Our October 1st is they've given us no change or waiver for that October 1st count.
Okay.
And we've kept a count, and I can pull it up. We've kept a count on homeschool so that we know how many additional students we've had homeschool.
Mm-hmm.
But since we've only done 25% each day, until we have the full day's on-site attendance and the full virtual, it's gonna be hard to tell you. We know how many we have enrolled, but it's hard when we've got our roles,
Yeah.
and then people who may have moved, they haven't showed up for the first time, but we can't drop them yet.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It
My
does.
worry is if we pull the numbers out of Weavis right now, they're
Mhm.
going to be high. Because nobody's been taken, the kids who haven't showed up in the beginning haven't been taken off yet.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like
do we-
normally we've contacted people, right now in the real world, we'd be 4 weeks in.
Right.
And we would be able to tell you, we would have contacted anybody who didn't show back up or that we didn't get requests for records from.
Right.
And been like, are you true or are you did you move and didn't tell us? But right now, that whole process hasn't happened.
So do we know, or do we have even a ballpark number of how many we have at each building? Because I did have that as one of my questions. How many students do we not have a connection with? Like, how many students do we know they were with us before, but they either haven't shown up, haven't requested virtual, haven't, not the ones that we know moved or that we know pulled for homeschool, but do we have a count for how many kids we do not have any connection with and have no clue where they are?
So are you asking about on-site and virtual kids who've had no attendance, didn't show up for their on-site day and haven't shown up for a virtual session yet?
Yeah.
I can get that for you. Again, it's gonna be
Well, I mean, I
interesting.
don't want people to have to go chasing numbers, right? I don't wanna give them more
Right.
work. We don't have time for more work right now. But I am just wondering, I guess too, can we check that we definitely have a process in place that makes sure that somebody at every building is verifying all students? So we can make sure that, frankly, we don't have a student that is somewhere that should be somewhere and is hurt, is been
Well,
taken.
right now, we do have that process. I mean, we have
Right.
our attendance process. The issue is, right now, if you're on site, you've only been asked to come to school one day
Right,
at all.
right, but at least
And we
we've
had parents
touched
who
you.
had some confusion, or what was my bus, or they weren't sure, they sent them on the wrong day, so one day isn't I mean, we've got who was here and not here who was supposed to be.
Okay,
Virtual, this is their first full week of you have a schedule and we should know. You should have contacted, you should have logged in, you should have been in contact with your teacher. We should know something. And then, right now, the way that it's set up is on Monday next week, you should have your work in virtual this week is your attendance. We take attendance every Monday at 8 a.m. for virtual and your work of the past week. So if you showed up, if your teacher saw you, if you logged on, if you turned in work, you were present. So we'll have a list from that absenteeism. Actually, Joyce White and Kelly Wolf met today with Matt Harvey over at the prosecutor's office.
Yeah.
Because we are trying to do exactly what you're saying.
right.
I've got to be fair to all of these folks who are, they're confused because it's confusing and overwhelming, and not punish people and still keep kids safe. If I haven't seen you in 6 months, I need to lay eyes on you, either through a screen or in person somehow. And so I would say by the end of, certainly by the end of next week, you will have had to have been on site. 5, 6, 7, we will have had a whole week of on site, and if you were absent, we're calling you. And virtual, you would have had a week, almost 2 weeks to make some sort of contact with us. And if you haven't, those are the folks we start contacting with robocalls and scheduling SAT meetings with. And those are the ones that when we met with, I didn't meet with them, when we met as a team, the difference between your attendance is erratic and I haven't seen you and it's a safety issue. We've asked him and they've agreed to prioritize kids that we just can't get eyes on. Those are the ones we're worried about.
Okay.
And can I also address, Ms. Acton, your question about the enrollment, even though we may not have what our decline specifically looks like. One of the things that we did with the elementary schools is we mapped out each one of them. Instruction and Kelly Wolf did a fantastic job with just really drilling down the numbers in the elementary with virtual and their numbers and the teachers there, and then the in-person class sizes, and with the numbers in each group and the in-person keeping their numbers to a safe threshold, that it kind of became a wash because we needed all of those positions, and that's why you're seeing an uptake in us requesting some of the additional elementary, because even though those positions in those specific districts have an increase for them, we looked at cross county to see if there could be any absorption anywhere else, and it just there wasn't any holes that we could fill, and we could do it a little bit with the virtual, but we've tapped into all of those capacity areas. So we mapped all that out and looked into every type of scenario before we got into the position of requesting these additional ones. Without knowing what and being able to provide to you what the decrease in enrollment is, it really doesn't free up any positions within the elementary setting, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. And then the only other question I had was about our autism mentors. Just like, what are they? Is that a new thing we haven't had before? And what are we doing with those?
Can you, and I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
Yeah, you did. Are you saying autism mentors?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Which ones where are you at?
I am at the very
That's at the bottom.
bottom. There's our document attachment for autism mentors and a list. just wondered what they would be doing and what. I mean, I know we have significant populations at the certain schools, and I hadn't seen those before.
It's a separate certification that they can receive.
Uh-huh.
And so that lists them as kind of a separate designation.
Is it something
But
that's
not-
So, is
recognized?
it like the principal mentors that we had? So we have, principals can go through this training class that qualifies them to be principal mentors, so that if we have a new principal, we can assign them as their mentor and they can get paid by the West Virginia Department of Education. I believe, is this the similar program for autism, where if we get a new autism key person, that these people are now qualified to be mentors to new teachers of students with autism?
No, it's actually part of, once you reach that training and that status of that certification, then you can have that added to your title. And then once you have autism mentor added to your title, then when we have positions that we post, then you hold that title where you have more seniority or advanced opportunity to get those positions because you already have the designation in your title.
But they don't get a stipend from WVDE to mentor other autism teachers.
Yeah, they do get, I'm trying to remember.
Amy, this is Beth. I don't mean to interrupt. I think they may also get a pay bump based on West Virginia code. And so that's the mechanism for payroll to know that for this fiscal year, those are our autism mentors in the classroom, and they probably get some kind of pay bump based on West Virginia code.
Right, and you haven't seen it before because I don't believe that it's ever been a board approved process. So I believe this is the first time that you're seeing it. But that is, to Beth's point, is to trigger payroll to do what they need to do on their end.
That the state does that, we don't do that,
They get more money
right?
when they have that designation.
Right, okay.
Mhm.
All right, any other questions or discussion on the consent agenda?
I'm sorry, I do have one last question. Do most of the retirements and resignations that we have COVID-related, I'm assuming, but are we keeping track of those?
They don't have to give us a reason for their retirement or resignation.
Mhm.
Several of them are, obviously there were folks who had the time in to do it. I will say not necessarily COVID. Not necessarily COVID itself, except as it extends to the work environment is so different that you're going to have to change so much that for some folks at the back end of their career, if you're already paying us to work, which we have some folks who have so many years in, the work that it's gonna take to transition is just more than some folks are willing to do. It's because we have a medical process. If the issue was you can't be in the school because of medical for COVID, those folks, we have a process. We have dozens of folks who turned in their paperwork, and we've worked with their doctor, and we've given them accommodations so that they don't have to be in that environment. They don't have to work physically with students. So we've been able to accommodate them. So most of these, their retirements or their resignations, aren't because they couldn't be accommodated. A lot of it is just, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot when you've taught for 25, 30
35.
years, and we're all of a sudden saying, I need you to learn all these new programs, I need you to have this new process, I need you to do things these new ways, I need you to. So, Amy, if you know, if I misspoke in anything, you let me know.
No, I think it's, I think to your point, it is a combination of several factors. It's related to, the new pressures, the changes, some have taken the health factor into consideration that it's just, too uncertain, and how this will impact them. But yeah, it's many of those factors combined that that have led them to this decision, and, obviously you see it because you've noticed it, that there's definitely a lot more resignations and retirements this time of year on the agenda than what we've seen in the past.
We are certainly asking people to do really hard things.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Any other question or discussion? All in favor of the consent agenda? Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you very much. Moving down to unfinished business. Approval to extend section 1000 policies on public review.
Thank you. Yes, on this evening's agenda is a request from the board to approve extending the section 1000 policies on public comment for another 2 weeks. It was brought to my attention that the wrong section was inadvertently placed up for the public to see what those policy changes were, and the ability to comment was there, but not on the correct things that they needed to see and comment on. So would like to give them that opportunity to have more time to review the correct ones in that respected comment period.
I have some questions.
Sure.
I don't believe that the public has been given a presentation on these policies, and I was expecting a presentation. It says current manual, so it reads as if, section 1000 is already approved and that you're just wanting to change those redlined policies. Is that correct? Because I've been asking a few times, is that the current manual?
Yes, that's our current, we have the current policy 1000 in there, and a redline version because the board likes to see the difference between what exists and what's new.
If it was current, why doesn't it show the date that it was approved?
I think from how I've seen the policy manual is that it's not necessarily the whole date of when that policy manual was approved. What they do is when they update sections or add sections, then there's like an approval or a revised or an updated section within that policy manual. And so what Board Docs does, what we're trying to shift all the policies to, is they connect a lot of these to what's already written and established in code. And so when you have a policy manual that you do kind of independently, and what the theme has been, is that some of those policies, and a lot of them, aren't going to be in our current policy manual. So you're going to see what we're putting up there for section 1000 is a little bit more expanded and explains a little bit more in detail than what our current policy manual had entailed.
Right. So it's
hard.
It's
It's really hard to kind of match
making the
section
public
1000 with a specific policy in our current manual, because not a lot of it existed.
Yeah, so it's misleading because this isn't part of the current policy. This is just, there are some things that have been changed, but this isn't right out of the current policy and you're just redlining.
So if there's a different way, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut across you. If there's a way that you believe it would be better understood, then we're happy to put it in a different format. because those changes are ones where, and we can do a presentation, I will go, as I have conveyed to the board before, the requirements that were put forth when the state changed the regulations, there were different sections where we had a choice of, we could have chosen this decision or this decision, and we made certain recommendations to those. And I think what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, that it would, if we gave a presentation on, there was a choice here, and here were the choices that you had, here's what we recommend. There was a choice here, here's what we recommend. Would that be helpful?
So what I'm saying is, when I look on the website, the board website, and I look up the current policies, there are dates of when each part was accepted and approved by the board. But none of this shows that any of it was ever approved, so you get the impression that this is all new information, and of this new information, some of that's getting changed. So that's what I'm, number one, clarifying, because I think that is a lot. It's 104 pages to the public to read through while we are trying to start school. You know, they're worried about getting their kids in school every day. They can't even, and then we're getting these policies that, it's, I mean, I read the paper too, and it's, these policies are lots of policies, 300 and some pages were, approved, and a lot of the public was blindsided, and now there's 104 more. Nobody knows why, who asked for these changes. I know that some of them are supposedly in line with the new state code, but what is the push for this? It seems that we should be focused on getting schools straight and getting the bond and levy passed, but it's getting all these policies changed, and it's not clear. It's like this was such a rush that the wrong policies were put up, but they were already put up, and that was already extended. So is this a third copy? Because, the first copy was 7 pages. And so then the public was told, okay, we're gonna, we made a mistake, we're gonna put this up for 2 more weeks. So I think it's been up now. So now you're wanting to extend that, but still never given the public a presentation, or the board. I mean, I don't know the purpose. Maybe some of the people here do, but I don't know. I don't know the background of this. And I just think the public ought to know, especially given, the public is really screaming for transparency, and it would be helpful to have the public understand the purpose of some of this. Which ones are based on code and which ones are not? I mean, why would you want to remove, when the board has 3 options for negotiation, why would you want to remove 2 of them? What's the reasoning? And people look at that and they send me emails or different forms of communication, and I can't answer it. I know that there's ways for them to make comment, but maybe they feel more comfortable just complaining, saying, why are they giving us all this? Anyway, I would appreciate a presentation. I'd appreciate the time to ask questions, and I feel like the public has a right to know just as much as anybody else, what's going on with this.
To your point, we would be happy to, I can do, if it's the will of the board for this policy at the next meeting, I will go through that policy and do exactly that. I'll show you every place in which you had an option to make a decision, where you had some leeway in the law on those changes, and then give you both of, or all 3 of them, and then you can decide which one of those you choose and why. I'm happy to do that.
I mean, I found policies, and this book just came out, so are you saying that this was based on last year? Because you said that they saw this at the board meeting last year, they saw these changes, is that right?
I'm not sure exactly everything that you're referring to, but the policy online is kept up to date. Those books, they print them at the end of the last legislative session, and they're always out of date as soon as they
Okay.
print them and they go back in.
Okay.
But, again, I do want to make sure that everybody has a different idea of what constitutes transparency, and I do think that we struggle sometimes with folks who, you want them to be involved and you want them to get information, and we sometimes give way too much information, and we go overboard and we confuse things, like you said, or we do it in ways that seem overwhelming or frustrating to people, and it's not the intent. So we can come back at the next board meeting and we'll put on the agenda, that policy 1000, because that seems to be a good place to start, and say, okay, if this way didn't work, then let's try it this way, and we'll walk through them step by step, and I think you as a board, will figure out what level of, detail you want to walk through at the board meeting on policy, and how much you wanna do your homework on, offline, and how much you wanna do it in here, and that's something that you just have to give us direction on.
I think to provide some clarity too, with, all this discussion, I remember when we first got on the board and we were all serving, one of the main concerns we had was the fact that we felt like the policy manual had never been touched, or we had policies that we had, you look on the policy and it said approval date 1989. It was like, why have we not looked at this policy? So once we, got an HR director who, I think Amy's done a great job with that. In the midst of, like Donna said, everybody is trying to do everything we can, but her role as an HR director is policy and recruitment and retainment of personnel. So knowing that and trying to continue to keep up with that, because we have had it as a goal to go through every single individual policy we have, make sure it is the most up to date, that legally it fits the requirements of the West Virginia legislature, which again, we had seen that some of our policies didn't, but we were doing them because that's the way we've always done it. And so since we had heard that, we thought, well, that doesn't make sense because we want to be able to do it. So in that regard, I think that's why there have been all these, because Amy has taken that to heart and done her job, which I appreciate, to say, okay, I'm going through, that's part of my job. I'm going to go through those. Then we would get the policies, and when we would look at them, as you said, Donna, it was hard to understand because we didn't know, without going back and researching a policy, what was new and what was not. And what are we actually voting on? So we asked, can you redline the stuff that is new or old that you're getting rid of so we know what's leaving and what's coming in? And it made it just a little bit more efficient for us to be able to do it without putting any more exorbitant amount of work on the staff to be able to do that. But I think to Donna's point, you're right, trying to make sure that we continue to better that process. Okay, so if that is the case, I don't know that it's necessary to, spoon feed me either. I feel like it's my job, as a board member. Yeah, I don't have time. I don't have time, but I do try to read every single page that you put in here. But maybe if you're going to have, no matter what the policy is, if you can give us a synopsis of, this is the policy, this is what we've changed in the policy, this is why. I don't, me personally, I can't speak for everybody on the board, but I certainly don't want to micromanage why you made a choice and what, and make me make the choice. That's not my job as a board member. That's your job. That's what we hired you to do. Make the best choices for the system, and then we hold you accountable to that. So, but I would like to know what those changes are and why, so that at least the public knows that. And I think that's reasonable, at least in my own opinion, for you to be able to say, this is the policy we're putting on review, here are the specific changes we've made to it and why, and then it goes out. and then people can choose to read that, or they choose not to because they've listened to that synopsis and they appreciate that feedback, and whatever. But that would be my suggestion. I feel like that allows the transparency for the public to not have to read 100 pages, but yet gives them information that I think they're probably looking for, because they don't want to have to read 100 pages, which I also understand.
Okay, we can
I don't know
do
what
that. I
you
think I have an idea between you, and if you've got any more feedback, what I can bring back in terms of a presentation that isn't, 2 hours of next. But explain the changes, and also recognizing that we're moving from a 319 page like PDF document to the online version, which has some different nuances as well, but the whole purpose of which was to make it searchable for people, so that they could see them, and we can, once they're done, we can connect forms and connect operating procedures too. So if you go to
Anybody has tried to find
right,
a leave
the
of
leave of
educational
absence.
value,
right.
yeah, you know why you want this
have
done.
no idea. You don't know what it's called. You don't know where it's at.
No.
So if we have the policy and you go to look for that policy, you can just type in leave of educational value.
Yeah, or-
It'll go to that policy, and then when you click on the policy, this program's gonna allow us to have the document where you can click into the document, and either certain ones you'll be able to fill out online and certain ones you'll have to print and fill out, but at least it'll all be right there in one place. It's just, it seems to be everything that we do is some Herculean task, so.
We
we'll get
also
through it.
started to do this in-house, and
Mhm.
we picked away at small pieces of it and found out how huge thing it was, and could not do a good job of using our own personnel to get through all of it. And that's why we've gone to an outside company helping us to do this, to be truthful with you.
But we don't have to present 104 pages at a time, or like before, 300 pages where people couldn't see what was buried in it, and that's why people are angry. If we would be 10 pages, or, in blocks, and go through it, it takes 2 minutes, do you see a problem? I mean, we have time to digest, but
Or if there's only 1 page of changes, then I put the whole policy on there, but explain to me the 1 page of changes that I need to understand. I don't really need to understand all the rest of it. It's the same way it's always been, and, I can read that.
Just one point of clarity too, as, why we're doing it in sections is that the company, I was left with the impression that they want you to do it all at once, which is, 300 pages would be nothing compared to what they wanted us to put out. And so we didn't want to do that. We wanted to do it in sections, so that way we could pare it down, in smaller chunks than what they had recommended.
I'm not sure what, their interest has to do with it. Like, so what? What's the point that that's what they wanted? I don't understand.
So essentially, we'll take this at whatever pace this board deems you want it done at. So what I hear you saying is you have a vote before you about whether or not to continue it for 2 more weeks. It sounds like you would like for me to bring back a presentation that explains all of the changes within that, where we're asking you to make decisions, a synopsis of those. And then at that time, you can decide whether or not you need more information or whether or not you're prepared to vote. Is that accurate?
But no, and then you would send it out to the public after we all get a presentation. Because the public still hasn't been given a
And
presentation.
that's a decision of the full board.
Right.
Once I present Dr. Joy, I'm not making any presumptions. I don't speak for this board until they vote. So if you choose to put it back out, yes, certainly.
All right, well,
In the past, when we have modified or updated, situations like this, what has been presented to the board has been, what has been in effect before, and then below that
or on the next page, or however it fits, the recommendation by the, folks that have worked with that they are recommending to the board. I mean, you're talking about 300 pages and all of that. I don't think anybody's gonna sit down and read 300 pages. I don't care who they are. What we need to read and what we need to ponder is what the change is for that particular paragraph or something, so that we know what we're doing. I don't see where we need to have 300 pages of this or whatever. That's, nobody's gonna read that, whether it's us or the folks out on the street. They're not gonna read that. They don't give a rip. Unless it, whether they are, whether it concerns themselves. So I mean, all of this stuff about doing a presentation and all that, you can take 300 pages and do three months on it. That doesn't make any sense.
Well,
So.
like Ms. Ogden said, I mean, I find it incredibly helpful that it's just redlined and highlighted the differences. I mean, you can sit there and you can read the 100 pages, or you can scroll through and look for the changes. I mean, you have the choice to do it either way. I'm not sure a presentation on every single changing it from county to district is necessary, but maybe what we can do is just, highlight, these are any major changes to the policy as opposed to, wording changes. I don't know if that would help satisfy you.
Yeah, and put the original beside, that sounds good, so, we can see, and
Well,
even breaking it down maybe into smaller chunks might make it easier for anybody to digest it.
Well, I think the smaller chunks are definitely already there when you're looking at the policy, because out of 100 and some pages, there, like I said, there's probably maybe a page or two possibly of changes that are actual changes and not wording that changes it from a county to a district or a district to a county or things like that. So
But that
we
was
just
what
wanna know what are the changes to the policy. That's what the public wants to know. If you're changing anything, they wanna know about it. And I think that's fair.
This 104 pages, that's not the current manual though. That's not current. Those are all proposed changes, is my understanding. But then they went into that and then said, okay, these red line are the changes. So that's, my concern is that it's misleading. It's making people think, or not intentional, but it's the assumption that, okay, this is all standard, we're only changing, it's only 3 pages of the 104 that has any red lines.
So
in
Amy,
it.
can you explain that piece of it or clarify that, or Dr. Gibson?
How about, again, I am happy to come back and I will have a presentation on every substantive change in there, anything that is more than a change in wording, anything that's a change in authority, anything that is a change in execution, anything that is a change. Most of the substantive changes evolve around the board's self-assessment process, which that self-evaluation did not previously exist. So, we can go through and you can spend more of your time on the things that are substantive within there, because policy 1000 is administration. It deals with your responsibilities and the responsibility of the superintendents and how those are executed with and independent of each other.
Perfect. How about if we put it out for public comment for 2 board meetings and bring it back to October 12th, because I think you're gonna be busy dealing with children's schedules for the next 2 weeks.
Oh, I'm optimistic. I can give up to Dr. Joe's point. I can give you a presentation at the next board meeting, and then you can decide at that We won't put it on for a vote, we'll just put on for, presentation, and then you'll have it out for 2 more weeks, and you can vote on it at the October meeting, if that's the will of the board.
I mean, there's nothing earth-shattering in there that we need to get past.
You have training on the content of that on September the 25th from the WVSBA, because it wasn't a change for Jefferson, it was a change for the state and all school boards. So maybe that will better inform your thinking as well.
I think that's fair, and I think it's fair to the public, so that they can see a presentation before they're asked to comment.
All right. So is there a motion to extend section 1000 policies on public review?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Is there a second?
I'm sorry, you're asking to extend it
Correct.
without a presentation, and then you're not gonna present it again?
No,
That's
just-
not what you're saying at all.
No.
What we're saying is that we're extending it, she's coming back with a presentation, and then we as a board will make a decision on whether we approve it or extend it at that point in time.
Approve or extend for the public to comment?
Whether we're gonna continue to put it out for a
Okay,
presentation.
so you're just
That
saying.
decision will be made after the presentation.
I see, so there's still gonna be an opportunity, at least for a presentation for the
Yes.
public.
Yes, and that
Yes.
will probably be on not the next board meeting, but the one after that.
October the 12th.
Am I saying that correctly?
It'll be next time or on October
I
12th if you
believe
find
that
we
I
have
can,
time.
I can have the presentation ready for you the next meeting.
Okay.
I can do that.
All right. So is there a second?
Second Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. All in favor of extending the section 1000 policies?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. All right. New business, action on approval of pre-K 2020-2021 calendar.
This was great consideration and work with our community partners and Jefferson team. We offer the pre-K calendar for your approval this evening.
And Mr. Dilly, is there anything in addition you'd like to say, or just the calendar that was presented? And that's,
I just want to commend the team. I know that they had a lot of conversations and discussion about what they felt was in the best interest of kids, what was developmentally appropriate, and how they could best manage and keep kids safe. And I think this plan really brings all of those things forward, and I appreciate all of their hard work and working together. As you know, working across district lines isn't always easy, but we appreciate the collaboration and effort that they put together on developing this calendar and working with us.
thank you. Is there a motion to approve the pre-K calendar for 2020-2021?
Osborne.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Cable, and thank you, Mr. Osborne. Any question or discussion? All right, all in favor of approving the pre-K calendar?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And can we ask what our pre-K numbers are, Mr. Dilly? Like, do we know how we're looking with pre-K this year? Do we have any virtual pre-K students?
We are supporting them through the program that the state did, and I'm trying to recall the exact name of it. It's more of a virtual experience and not a true pre-K program, just because of the limitations of the age. So we have been working to put that together. I do not have the numbers at this point. Some preliminary counts proved to be low, but we are slowly adding numbers to the rankings as we're moving forward. And I think having this additional information out with the calendar is going to help some people make some decisions. So we're anticipating, we're hoping those will climb, but a lot of folks are concerned, obviously, with the pandemic and are electing to hold kids at home. So we anticipate the numbers may be down this year a little bit compared to what we would normally see, but I don't have a final number yet.
I would also say that in the beginning, we were told, repeatedly and clearly that there would be no virtual preschool option, and then was it end of the week, not beginning of last week, but like the Friday the week before, maybe, was that it, Sean?
Something like that.
Yeah,
so very
WVD
long ago.
came out with an announcement that said, we still aren't going to have virtual preschool, but we're going to have distance parent support, or what did they call it? They called it distance parent support, distance academy. It's like, oh, virtual preschool? Is that what you mean? So they threw that option out there. It was I think it was within like 3 days of school starting. So some of this is their options keep changing, and so parents change they make one set of choices and then the options change, which also reminds me, and I deeply apologize because sometimes I just make assumptions that everybody lives and breathes this. For those of you who did not tune into the governor's press conference on Friday, when I gave my update on schools, I neglected to mention he changed on Friday the previous color coding system for school in session versus remote. Previously, if you were in orange or red, you could not start school in person. You had to start remote. If you were already going to school, you'd already started the school year, then the only thing that pushed you into remote learning was red. On this Friday, the governor changed that, and over the weekend, WVDE sent us out updated guidance to say, now if you go orange, even if you've already started, we will shut you down and put you into remote learning. So that is a pretty significant change. Right now we're still yellow, and earlier today we were at 4.25, so we're pretty far from that. But those numbers can fluctuate fairly wildly because it's a 7-day. We were up at 9.25, and 2 days later we were down to 5.25. So
right, and then he takes 4 cases or so, or 5 to plop us right up in to a different color.
yes, sir. So I apologize because that just made me think the virtual option just all of a sudden. So. And I think it becomes increasingly important, and we reminded our staff today of the board's support last week in getting them the option of childcare telework if they needed it, if we are pushed into remote. So we're going through that process of signing folks up and getting their paperwork.
And I also heard that they're contemplating adding an additional color to the map. So I don't know.
Joy.
Gold.
Yeah.
Gold.
It's between yellow and orange.
Oh, that's nice.
Sports are super important. super important, as I've learned.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I did not mean to distract from the
Nope.
preschool message. It just occurred to me that I'd forgotten to state that in a board meeting in case anybody isn't obsessed with this.
Nope, it's all good, and we'll just keep rolling with the changes.
I was gonna say, it's hard to keep up with it sometimes.
Right.
Week to week.
All right.
I just feel so bad because you feel like people can't count on your word anymore. You know, you feel like your personal integrity, if you tell people something, they trust you, and then you tell them, and 2 days later, it's not true.
No, it's a moving target all the time we're trying to do it.
All right, moving on. Superintendent's
Oh,
goals
wait,
for.
did you take a vote? On
Yes,
On the calendar?
yes,
On the preschool calendar? Okay, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure.
I got it. Superintendent goals for 2020-2021.
Yes, ma'am.
Normally, we spend almost, a half day or a whole day talking about this, and it's 8:20 at night, so
I
we've
just
got
wanna say, I don't
several
know that
hours.
we've ever spent a half day. I mean, do you remember ever spending a half day? Whole day, yes, half
Whole
day.
day, yes.
No.
I've never done a half day since I've been here.
No.
We've always done a full day retreat.
We can talk about breakfast in a few hours. Let's see here. Madam Superintendent, would you like to chime in on the goals that you foresee us taking on?
Well, I had provided to the board the departmental goals from each one of
the folks who are on the leadership team. And then I had pulled those all, in together to some focus areas. Certainly, I think first and foremost, and this is a point several of you have made, we have got to develop our virtual school capacity. This is not going away. If there is a vaccine tomorrow, we will have a significantly higher number of students on virtual than we've had in the past. Parents just know it exists and they know what it looks like and how it works for them. And so we have to have greater, not just technical capacity, but staff development and staff capacity to make that more fluid and become the school system of choice for folks all over the state. Because if it's virtual, we can have, we've discussed this before, we can have a Jefferson Virtual Academy camp the week before school starts, and it is now open enrollment, right? So somebody can live in Monongalia and they can go to Jefferson Virtual Academy. The law change that came into effect this July 1, 2020 allows for that. They could come up here for a 1 week, get to know you, meet all your teachers face to face. Hey, here's all the kids you'll be in virtual with. Go home and you're in virtual for the rest of the year. I mean, those are all possibilities, but we have to build infrastructure for that. Community, communication, and again, it's always an issue, and this pandemic has highlighted it. We make a significant effort to communicate information to people, and we are just dealing with 9,000 plus caregivers who use different venues, who prefer different ways of communicating, and who have different knowledge levels to begin with. And we are frequently either over communicating and complicating things and frustrating people, or under communicating, or communicating perfectly but putting it in a place where people that's not their chosen venue. It's just there's a lot of communication channels to manage, and finding out which ones people use. We will occasionally get complaints about the old TV station, and why aren't you running full programming on channel 18? Because all 18 people who watch it, it takes a lot of manpower to do that. So making some decisions about communication venues and what we're going to invest in them. Recruitment and retention of quality staff. I do think we have to place a significant emphasis on underrepresented populations. We actually met virtually this summer with a group of individuals who are involved in the Hispanic University Coalition, and we were unable to join them because you have to have at least 25% of your population is Hispanic in order to join. But we did meet with them and talk to them about some recruiting techniques and tools. Tanya Dallas Lewis and Amy Loring have done work for us to try to recruit additional minority candidates. It has to be. There are so few folks out there. As you know, there's been a significant drop in the number of people in education. We have to compete more than ever. We have got to recruit people, and we have to retain them by making them happy to be here and making them feel valued.
I think we were more effective too when we went out more to those schools on recruiting days. And I understand we haven't had the luxury of the personnel to do that like we used to, but somehow we have to identify those schools that are putting out kids that work within our framework well, and get out there to those colleges on recruiting days, or on days when several colleges have a recruiting day where we can see a lot of people quickly. Because I know I did a lot of those, and it was really effective to go to Concord and to Fairmont and those, and a lot of the Pennsylvania schools put out, we've recruited a pile of people from the Pennsylvania schools as well when we were going out to those schools.
I would agree completely. I think sometimes West Virginia and just
saying cold, I'm here from West Virginia, come and apply. I don't think that the name alone, whereas if you're standing there and you're professional and you're friendly and you're welcoming and supportive, I think you're gonna get more connection and relationship with people. I
We are
agree
a very
completely.
diverse state, and going to Putnam County or some other county is different than going to Jefferson or Berkeley County. And we have different things to offer than other places in the state.
I have a question. Do we work on the wording? Because none of these are measurable, and so do we suggest?
No, these
that?
aren't goals, ma'am. These are just me saying, these are the general areas I think you should create
Okay.
goals in. Yes, ma'am.
Generalities.
Are you done?
No, go ahead.
Because of this, the underrepresented population, we're down 60% for, minority, in administration in the county since 2015. So that's, I don't know if you word that as a goal, you know, to raise it back to the level where we were at least. I'm not sure how you do it. I just know how I write goals, you know, so something measurable. And I understand that the goals are supposed to be more student focused. And so I just would look at, like I looked at the West Virginia Balanced Scorecard, and it shows that we're, in the yellow for transition, so we're like, I don't know the word, not close to, meeting, what is it called? Does not meet standard. So, I mean, I would suggest that because the number one goal of the superintendent is to improve achievement, and if we have areas in the red, then we should focus on some of that. And post-secondary achievement is in the red, and I know that several administrators have been requesting a transition coordinator. I mean, that's just one idea, and that might be something that, an initiative that the board would take on, but, you know, I've seen so many, and especially minority students, they win athletic scholarships and they're back home in a year, and it would be wonderful if we had a transition coordinator, maybe start working with kids in 11th or 12th grade, something that some of the colleges do, but we could be doing that, you know, for our students, the kids that are low income, first year going to college or, you know, trade school, but they don't, kids that I've tried to help along the way, they didn't even know how to fill out a FAFSA. Their parents knew nothing about it. You know, you just have to know so much if you're a first-time student going to college. So I would think that we would want to focus on where we're in the red, and the other areas, the ESOL, or you call it English language learner, that's in the red. So we need to focus on bringing those up. So something that is measurable, you know, raise the score by a percentage point, or, you know, I'm not sure, this doesn't show exactly the numbers, and I know these are old numbers, but I think, you know, we have to focus on achievement as the main priority. And I guess while I'm talking, the other thing I was gonna say, well, you talked about those goals for your leadership team, and I mean, I really like the one with the legal doing more to train, and I believe that we especially need training in the area of special ed because it's consistently been a problem. You know, just lost a lot of money this year. Every year there's problems. The complaints that I get more than anything are about parents of children with special needs, and I can't tell you how many people have told me that they've called and they were told that if their child was not failing, they couldn't receive services, and I tell them that that's not true. But so some people don't know the basic rules about special ed, basic laws, And that would be wonderful for the attorney to start, teaching the staff, especially the people that are in charge of special ed. At one school, the director or coordinator of special ed didn't know what dyslexia was, and that blows my mind. So, I think that's, one more thing, I guess, is, I don't know if the bond or levy should be part of any of this planning of goals. I don't know how that works, but should that be a goal to try to pass the bond? And normally you'd see signs out, like, we have a levy. The public doesn't know anything about it. They asked me, where is it on the website, and I don't know. I did ask, I sent an email, but I never heard back of, where is this? So if you really want people to vote for that, I think that we should be, it's less than 2 months now. I think that's about it for me.
Really quickly before we move on, just so you know, the high schools do have workshops for the FAFSA, so that does exist.
I know, but I knew a girl who she couldn't go to any sports because of the grandmother, her car breaking down. She couldn't stay after school. It's not that simple, and that's a girl that got a track scholarship, and she was home within a year. And she was, public assistance, the grandmother, the only income was the public assistance check. They really could have used some support. But it's not just the FAFSA. It's just, maneuvering in a, especially in our state, which is mostly white, for a black or brown child to go away to college. They're already feeling insecure. And so it would just be helpful. For me personally, a teacher drove me to a college and said, this is a university. If he hadn't done it, I would have never known. And so I think that it would be helpful, especially since we're in the red in post-secondary achievement. This is a perfect time to, start helping the students.
Go ahead. I just personally think, I agree, I love the past volunteers that we have at the elementary level, and I think that is helpful to have adults involved in students' lives, and then when they get to middle school and high school, scheduling makes that very difficult to meet with them. So I would definitely agree with that. I think there's a point, the goals that I had when I looked at, what each one of the staff members gave and then what we're looking at. We obviously know that one-to-one initiative, virtual academy, all of the different components that go through with that are important. And let me start with this statement. First of all, I would like to say to you, Dr. Gibson, we have all been here with not one superintendent, but a superintendent and an interim superintendent before we got to you, all beating the drum, especially having young children at the time who've now grown up, of understanding the importance of devices in the hands of individual students. Never before you came could we get anybody to think it was important enough to make it a goal that had money behind it, and here's the plan. I hear you. Yes, I also feel it's important. Here's the plan that we're going to implement to make sure that we get technology in the classroom. So thank you for the fact that since you have come on board, we've had a plan. As you've stated before, it was a 3-year plan. First it was a 5-year plan, then it became a 3-year plan, and then it became a 5-month plan. Clearly we have lots of laptops ordered that we can't get. But for me, I look at that as okay, we're on the right track, we're doing the right thing. So if instead of our goal being just virtual academy, our goal is, I don't care if it's virtual awareness throughout the county, if it's virtual, whatever. I don't care what we call it. But then when I'm looking at everybody department-wise, individual goals, I felt like when I was reading those, how when you first came on and we said, Dr. Gibson, can you please help us first with every single school system starts and ends at a different time. Everyone has a different amount of instructional minutes. Everyone, it was all over the place. If you guys, I'm sure remember that. And it was, okay, we're gonna create a culture, this is one Jefferson. So we now need to move that up here as well. So if we give you a goal that for the virtual one-to-one initiative is one of your goals. So I need to know, what is curriculum instruction doing to hit that goal? What is Ms. Dallas Lewis doing to hit that goal? What is special ed implementing to hit that goal? Like every single department. What is maintenance and operations doing to hit that goal? Who's putting what money from where in? And how are we gonna hit that goal? And then every month, there's an update. If we ask, I want a waiver for textbooks. I don't care if we have another textbook for the next 4 years. Every amount of dollars that is supposed to be for textbooks is going to be routed here. And then the state says, oh, by the way, you must order these textbooks, which, as we know, they could do. Then you're able to come back and say, the goal was this, we have this much money, now we either have to take it out of here, or because we don't have the funds for here, it's going to be delayed X number of months. Or whatever the case is. I don't care how that is, but at least, and then like the goal that for the recruitment and retention, that does still feed into that, because if we can offer a virtual platform and some other creative ideas, as you're saying, we can solicit teachers from many different areas. So they all feed into the same feeling. Special ed for me, personally, is a goal that should be way up here. So again, in special ed, all the different areas that we are not doing well, including all the way down to, as Ms. Joy said, okay, this is an area. So we have somebody who runs the PASS program for the county, and we know that they do that. So how can you help us create, now it's your job, Ms. Lloyd Somo team, help me create a program of volunteers that I can get to help these high school students in underrepresented populations to make sure that we have parent volunteers or community business partner volunteers to come in here until we can afford to hire this mentor or that mentor, whatever. Can we start small? Can we do this? Like, how do we measure that? And then they're giving that report. How are they helping the superintendent and the entire Jefferson County school system to meet that goal and what's happening with it? They can still obviously do their things that they normally have to do. Obviously, we have to keep moving forward. But I think to be able to say we want 5 goals or 7 goals, I think it's going to be too overwhelming. It's got to be 2 or 3 goals of areas that we know are absolute concerns, and that needs to be our focus. And then we get that update every single month to know where are we in the status of these goals and what is every department doing to help us meet those goals. Or maybe they have found an area that needs to be addressed in another separate piece, but we would know that. And then it can be measured. I agree that I want to measure things by percentages sometimes, and I think, as Ms. Joy says, the only problem I have that we have found over and over and over again with the state, every time we have tried to do that, the state changes the test or the way they provide the assessment. So where we used to measure that by the people that came into the buildings, what was that even called? Now I can't even remember it. Remember you would change buildings, so one person from one county would go to a building in another county and you would get measured?
OEPA.
Thank you.
OEPA.
So it used to be OEPA, so we would measure how much better did we do on OEPA based on what building. And then they threw that out too. So I'm fine with doing that, but even as Ms. Joy said, some of those things that are on there are not even true now. So we need to find ways that we can measure that specifically, but I think to be able to start, we need to at least align ourselves that we are all working towards the same goal. And every department is working towards hitting that goal. So if it is, like I said, the one-to-one, whatever the case may be, for me, as far as the one-to-one goes, I know we needed all these ordered because we had to get going. But I don't know that I want to spend another $1 million on Chromebooks if you come back and tell me that you talked with Apple or Dell or this place or that place, and we can do a contract for $2 million, and every 3 years they replace them all. But we have to pay them X number of dollars a year because we don't know, like, how long are they gonna last, and then we're gonna have to buy a whole millions more. So would we be better off contractually getting with a company and getting them, and then same with, you know, technical support, would we be better off having a technical support number that we're paying a company that a parent can call at any time? They may be calling India, but that's what lots of other companies do. So I prefer that's not the case, but I want to at least have the options to know if people need help, they need help. And like, you know, we've all been saying, you can't call the guidance counselor. They don't have time to answer, or the school counselor, whatever we need to call them. But, and I feel like student growth, to put, counseling has been on here forever. That really goes with student achievement. Because if they can't get a schedule and they don't get flexibility in the schedule in that department, and then they don't have the dual enrollment options or the opportunities to take them at 9th grade and 10th grade instead of just 11th and 12th, or, you know, which would be Mr. Dilly's area, or the SOMO team, and this, everybody's gotta be working towards the same thing. So recognizing that that is the goal, how do we get there? So to me, that's where I would like to see us move. Pick 2 or 3 areas, this is what we want, and then I'd like every single team to tell me, or tell you, that you can report to us, how are they helping you to reach that specific goal? Instead of you having to run around like a chicken with your head cut off doing one thing, and then the team over here is doing their own thing, and it's not working. I don't know, I'll be quiet.
I was glad to see the leadership thing on there, which you have not gotten to yet. You probably knew I was gonna bring that up, but,
Well, you intimately understand the importance of it.
Judy Marcus is not gonna be with us forever, and
Oh, she's got 5 more years. She's got 5 more years.
we were lucky.
She promised me 4.
We were lucky, we did well in replacing the people we have at this point, but we're still kind of working in a deficit. And we have to find, we have to do something with the leadership program. I mean, you know that as well as I do.
Although I think that does play into the recruitment. And again, I am not, the whole point was simply to say these are the areas that we need to focus on, but I need your direction as to how fast and how hard you want me to narrow those down and go. Like, if you tell me that this year's goal is that we have a device in every kid's hand by the end of this year, that we have a virtual curriculum, and that every teacher has done at least 18 hours of training in virtual, I mean, those are measurable things. We need to have a discussion about how reasonable they are in terms of timeline and how.
My only trouble with putting a device in everybody's hand this year is that they're gonna turn over at the same time.
That's why I think.
And I think it's going to, down the road, hit us pretty hard unless we do like we're doing with the athletic fields and put 500,000 or $1 million away every year, shelf somewhere, so it doesn't hit us all at once. Because at this point, we've really scrambled to get a lot of devices out there. But in 3 years or 4 years, we could be in trouble.
Well, and that's where I said we may be able to do that if we look at a contract and the contract says that, and we know we're not buying a textbook again. We might buy classroom sets, but we don't know what, you know, they all come with those online components, and if every child had one, they could use it in the classroom and they could use it at home, or the ones that don't have them, we have enough of them, whatever, however.
But
Yeah,
it's
but you
not-
get the online when you buy the textbook. And
Right.
to buy the online costs the same amount as buying the
As
textbook.
to buy both, right.
And I think a long-term plan is what we want you to come back to us with on those devices. It's not we don't have the expertise to figure this out.
Well, okay, so, and I just wanna make sure I understand. We did a presentation in February on one-to-one, and we laid out teachers, kids, training. We laid out a 5-phase 3-year plan. So what you want me as my goal, which I can write in a measurable format
to develop the virtual program to include a one-to-one device, and they may be different for K2 than for 312. We actually had a teacher committee who met frequently about what device to use for 312. K2, there's a lot of debate, because developmentally in terms of swipe and touch versus type and click, and they do a lot of content consumption and not a lot of content creation, so they need different things. So I can come back with the articulated goal in terms of, here's how much training all of the teachers will have had, here's how many devices will be in folks' hands, here's how many hotspots we'll have up and running, and have that measurable, but the goal is the development of the virtual program overall. Is that accurate?
And where we're gonna be in 2 or 3 years. I
So,
think
3 years?
we, yes, I think we need to be sure with this goal that we have a plan for how we sustain this thing.
We're required, I think, in the code to have, goals based on achievement too. So I just wanna make sure that you are aware of that or in line with that.
I
Well,
think
and
any
every
of
year
those
we've
goals
had-
we've talked about go back to achievement, because if you're recruiting, more minorities and everything, our minorities hopefully will be achieving better and achieving more. So almost everything we've talked about can go back to achievement of our students.
And every year we do present, in a normal year, and again, I'm so sorry, I realize this has got to be so frustrating for you. In any normal year, at the beginning of August, we have a public full-day retreat, and I go over, here's every statistic we have, here was attendance, here was discipline, here were the scores, and that didn't happen this year for obvious reasons. And so in the past, we've had goals like, and actually, Mr. Osborne, this was one of yours, was the increase of our 3rd grade reading scores. And so we took the last ones, and then we took the next set. It is very hard to give you a measurable one this year. We could certainly say on a broader level, to your point, post-secondary transition. When we sat down and looked at that and went to the West Virginia Department of Education, and again, you weren't here, but we gave out updates to the board at board meetings that those were incorrect. They had not coded or given us credit for all of our James Rumsey students. So that was us working with the State Department on WEVIS. Now, if the board wants, it sounds like there was interest in special education, a goal around either running parental education classes and maybe having a goal of the number that we want run and the amount of parental attendance on those. Is that something that's the will of the board?
We also need to include in that the deficiency that we had, that we were dinged on for sending too many students out of state. Because, they'll accept a plan for a while, but they want it fixed eventually.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, and, I'd like to see even a better merger of, standardizing, yes, this person is in a special education class, but how does the curriculum align with the, general education classes where, special ed is obviously a part of curriculum and instruction, but how do we see that collaboration happening? And, how are we getting better at that as far as the communication goes?
I do think, and this is just, I need to clarify, the reduction of the out-of-state placements is predominantly around behavior. We don't have placements out of state for cognitive issues or for performance issues. They're all out of state because they have significant behavioral issues that we simply can't manage. So part of that, and we had an hour-and-a-half long meeting this morning about our UCARU program and our certification levels in the building of staff and the amount of training that we have to do to get folks comfortable to manage those. So
So like. if you
That's a
could-
focus on behavior versus,
But it is and it isn't. It's still, if you have children that are not behaving in a certain manner in a classroom or can't, it still affects all the other students in that classroom. You know, many times adversely. So, you know, if that is part of the goal that you wanna make that, or whatever team you have, that, you know, Miss Dallas Lewis is part of the special education goal is gonna be that at least 70% of all staff will be trained, in this by, you know, by the end of the school year, or whatever, you know, choice that they make for the training, I don't care what it is. But do you see what I mean? Like, every person takes their piece, what is my piece of this goal? And what do I have to do to make it happen? And it has to be, something like that is measurable. I think that's a better way for us to do that and get to that instead of the way that, you know, we could spin our wheels on it.
You can measure how much money is wasted, you know, each year, so we could reduce the number of, money that's spent on legal fees or, due process hearings, or like this, thing, again, the state brought on, which cost the county. So maybe looking at that, and, that way we can redirect the money to train, you know, the behavioral specialists. But I still, so you're saying that, the balanced scorecard is, there's no value to it? As far as, I mean, if we're in the red in two areas,
so,
with the English language learner and the you're trying to stay on the special ed, is that what it is?
no ma'am, I am trying to convey that when that card came out over a year ago, based on the previous year's data, we did a number of presentations on that to explain the different sections of it. There's been no update of the data since then, okay? The areas that you see that are in the red, the post-secondary ones, those are meetings with the State Department resolved that those were predominantly ones of WEVA's coding errors. They determined that they were not coding Jefferson County students who attended James Rumsey back to us, and those are completers, which
What about
led
the
to
English language
significant issues. English language learners, and Dr. Ebersol gave a presentation, and he can give another one. There are only, the only folks who get, scored in that are ones who have over, I think it's 50, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, students who receive ESL services. There's not a single school system in the state for ESL that isn't in red. So not a single county has met those. I would love for us to meet them. I would. And Dr. Ebersol has developed a significant number of supports for those. And if the board would like, we can come back again and do a presentation on ESL and what supports are in place for those students. And if the board wants a goal around English language learners, I think that would be a wonderful goal. I think that would be a great support. We have the highest percentage ELL students for our size in the entire state.
Well, what about improving their scores, cause that is something measurable, correct?
Do we have
That's-
any idea,
that's what I just
do we
said.
have any idea what type of score or what a score might look like this year?
Not this year. We have the scores from the previous year for ESL students, which is exactly what we're talking about. We
Right.
have their scores.
But
from
what
those.
I'm saying is, do we have any idea what assessment or what might be used this year?
Right now, we have not been given, the only thing that we have been told is that they do not, last year they canceled them, you know,
Right.
obviously.
Right, so we have no relevant scores that are recent.
No, sir, we don't. I think that they're still working on how they're going to, I presume, because they haven't put out an RFP, they haven't, discussed any, new, assessment evaluations. Presumably, their discussions with us have said they plan on using the same assessments. They're just going to have to calculate, and this will be interesting,
cause they're gonna have a hard time calculating growth. They're just gonna have to redo their formulas for 2 years worth of growth as opposed to 1. I'm not sure how they're gonna overcome some of those logistical things, but in theory, they're gonna use the same tests.
So to my point, basically, if we said, you know, special education would be a goal, maybe the department for Somo department, part of the input that Mr. Ebersol would provide, knowing that English language learners is a, you know, is an interest of that because we have those numbers. Part of his goal to implement to that would include that, or coming up with a measurable way he feels we could do that adequately, because I feel like he has a very good handle on that. And I love the programs he's implemented in the elementary level for the summer programs that have been so well received by the Hispanic community. So to be able to have that, and then you then can monitor that, and because that's his part of that component. It's not something that, you know, you're seeing the overall big picture, this is our special ed goal, and you're managing how all these people doing what they need to do to help you with the attainable goal of that. Because with Somo team, obviously, social and emotional is a big component of special education. But that may be a target area that he wants to add with that, to make that part of the measurable piece. Is this connected?
So for the, I believe so. So for the underrepresented, for the recruitment retention for underrepresented populations, would tying the leadership into that be, and again, I'm trying to subsume some of these so it's not 10 separate goals.
We need about 3. I would
Yeah.
say no more than 3.
No.
Unless we carry one over from last
and
year.
If you're, you know, using human resources as, one, goal maybe for the human resources, individual, I don't know what it's called. Creating an exit interview when people do leave, and also when students leave, because you're asking, you know, where are they, do they leave for homeschool? So anybody that leaves, and should be a simple.
Haven't we been trying to do that with personnel?
We do if they don't have to.
No, but we've been attempting to do that with
We
personnel.
can't force them to, but yes, we do. So it sounds like, you want me to come back with some more measurable goals in number 1, virtual implementation of a one-to-one device initiative and the training and technical support and a timeline to make that happen. Number 2, special education, both in terms of educating parents, how special education is tied into instruction, and reducing out-of-state placement. 3, goal for English language learners and their performance on whatever state assessment that we're getting information this WVDE is going to utilize in the future. And number 4, recruitment, retention of underrepresented populations, including in that a leadership program for grooming individuals to take administrative roles. And for each one of those, I should have how the various departments are contributing to that goal, and then be prepared, once you approve them, to have a monthly update for you on those.
Laurie, do we really want a monthly update, or would a quarterly update
Well,
be?
here's my issue though with that too. So the recruitment and retention of that, and then the leadership, to me, recruitment and retention is not your goal. That's Amy's goal. Because recruitment and retention of underrepresented populations is Amy's and Miss Dallas Lewis's goal. How are they going to meet the goal of that's a leadership goal. That is part of that leadership goal. That's not your goal individually, and it's how are they gonna help you make that a measurable difference, and how? Does that make sense? I mean, I don't see where
Yeah, and
that is your your goal, because you don't have anything to do with coming up with ideas on how to recruit and retain, that's why we have a kick butt HR person.
And going back to number 3, I hate to bank all that on scores. If there was some other way, I mean, scores are fine, but it's only one small piece of the puzzle. If there was some other way along with that we could take a look at that.
And maybe
With scores.
parent contacts, or, because we also have, parent liaisons who, we've specifically been working with to connect with our underrepresented populations. So I'll come back with, to your
Yeah, just
point,
think of
scores
another
and
way, another way we can get a perspective of that. Because I hate to bank, I hate to bank everything on scores, because scores are just a snapshot.
And again, the guidance counselor and the scheduling and all the different pieces that were in those components, I don't know how to possibly make it any better. The whole system as a whole is not working. I feel like that's not, I mean, that to me is, we need to measure our kids, having, like I said, having the flexibility that they need, our kids being able to get their schedules done in a timely manner, our kids, all that stuff is curriculum and instruction stuff, right?
And we had that goal set last year.
Correct.
And we required the principals and the school counselors to go to the training on scheduling.
Yep.
We had work groups for them in the spring. They had met, we had a deadline for the elementary ones to have theirs, the middle school ones to have theirs,
And then the world blew up.
And then it just blew up.
Right.
So that's
So
on
again,
us.
we're
But to your
still gonna
point,
be
and-
looking for that, but that's not, I mean, that should be, we're in the mood of doing that, like, that should be something that we're doing anyway, it shouldn't be a goal, like, it's not.
Should a measurement of that be like, dual enrollment and
Yes,
AP enrollment?
Yes, when
and
you give us those number anyway, right, you give us those numbers, and that's Sean's piece of that, again, that goal is just making sure that we have those numbers. Are those dual enrollment classes increasing? And which schools, how are they increasing? And are the, which all of those things I know are happening, but it enables that to keep happening. We've had those numbers, and we keep track of those numbers, and I know you do, because we get them. So, that, I'm saying that's not necessarily, I don't feel like a measurable goal. I do feel like there's gotta be another way to help students, and I think that whether it's the underrepresented populations, as Dr. Joy was saying, or it's students in general, we have to get better at being able to provide some kind of mentoring for students to be able to help, because it's way too overwhelming and their needs are not being met. Unless you kind of know somebody who knows somebody that you can kind of ask or call or get help from, many times you're falling through the cracks, and it's not all of them. It's just, there are a lot of students, and now we're gonna have an ever-changing bigger platform.
What about increasing the number of minorities in these dual enrollment and AP and honors classes? Because, that would help a couple of areas.
And we certainly
We
had that as a goal.
Yep.
We can continue to present that. Some of this, it sounds like what you need is information as well. Like us, just, like if we presented to you every, October, here's how many of every category of student is enrolled in dual enrollment, how many classes, how many AP classes. So we've done that in the past, but we've done it tied to a very specific goal. We present it and then we move on to the next thing. We don't have every November, you're going to get this. Every December, you're going to get this. So one of the things that I can do in terms of helping with communication is say, this is the data that you're gonna get at this time of the year. This is sort of like the way we standardize the LSICs, where we created a data template and we dropped in everybody's data and we made the format the same every year, so you saw changes in it year to year. I can do the same thing with some of these big pieces where you're like, I want to see minority enrollment in AP and dual enrollment, and I want to see it every single year. So when you get it and everybody's schedules are finalized October, second meeting in October, give me that presentation every year so I know it. So I can get a list of, from what you've said today, here's about the time of year when we would do that, and what of these things do you want me to present? And then also bring you back the goals articulated with measurement. Does that sound reasonable?
And for me personally, that's me personally, I do not feel like staying with a 3-year technology plan is gonna work. It's not going away, and we have ripped this Band-Aid off, where before, we really always tried to focus on, well, we're not gonna let technology drive education, we're gonna let education drive technology. All of a sudden, we had a pandemic, and it did reverse. And now we're scrambling to try to make sure that we can provide the tools and training to catch up with that. But the Band-Aid is gone, scab has done bled, we have a scab, now we gotta move on, so we gotta heal it. So, we do need those numbers though of the contracting versus just purchasing all these pieces, because I think, as Mark said, for us to have a goal of just purchasing these pieces is not a productive financial way to do that. It's not gonna work. And then what are the funding sources that we need to have to be able to maintain that goal over the next, several years, and how do we get there? I think that is a more measurable way for that. And then, as far as the virtual academy, whatever, you and Sean wanna come up with, you wanna make sure that we have every main classes, math, social studies, science, and English will all have drop downs, and there will be, every content standard will have a learning portal piece that's in every single one of those by the end of the year. Or this year we'll have 50% of them, by mid-year next year 75, or we're gonna pay our teachers next summer to make sure we get this, and this, I don't know. Whatever you come up with, but that's where we need to be able to start to see how that's gonna expand to work on the educational piece.
As far as with the special ed, the legal with Ms. Sutton, kind of training on the law, that would be helpful. And, giving parents their rights, on the county website. I must, I don't know, 10 times every 2 weeks, I'm directing people to rightslaw.com because they ask me, is this legal, is this the law? And if the public could just have some basic information about, direction and what their options are, who do they go to for OT, or, I think that would be helpful with the special ed.
We could certainly look at clarifying our special education page and make it more easily navigable to your parents' rights, that explains it in plain language and has the link through to the regulations. It is certainly, the state certainly does not always put it in an easily readable format, but as you well know, that they require us to distribute it in that format, so us developing a more parent-friendly training around that, we can certainly work on that.
Well, and some measurable goal of that too, if you decide with that is, okay, we have X number of, how many days are we making sure that we have a SAP meeting? Are we running an average of 5 days before we see a student? Are we an average of 30 days before we see a student? We wanna get that down. We wanna make sure that, we have those meetings. All IEP meetings are done by X instead of we're into June, July, and August and still doing them. Those type of measurable goals that Cindy might come up with for her department to be able to add to that special ed.
Well, we do get those already from both the state and the feds. They give us an annual score report on whether or not you met your timelines for testing, whether or not you met your timelines for transition, whether or not, so all of those, that's how we came upon you are placing too many Caucasian students in out-of-district placements.
Right, but I wanna know, as the manager of that department, if she feels like she wants to increase that by 10%, that becomes part of the goal. That you then help her to manage to make sure if she's not hitting that goal, then what is that department not doing to make sure we're hitting that goal, and how do we do that? So then it's not all just your job to come up, and make all this stuff happen. That's what we have all these other people for, to to help you reach the goal of bettering the system. That's what we all want.
Like Mr. Osborne said before about, helping the special ed situation by targeting the elementary reading at a, sooner, right, before
And we did that
second
with
grade.
math too. Remember, we did math, we had the goal, we raised it up, we did all the staff development from that, so.
We did.
I think at this point in time, though, it's very difficult to do that because we don't have this past year's information, and we don't know what information we might get this year.
Well, what about the dyslexia, the evaluation that came up in that meeting? Is that gonna go through, or are we gonna start evaluating kids? I think,
That may be part of the special ed, though, that you're saying you're right, because that's a new tool, right, that we chose. So how many students were tested and what were our outcomes and, how much better did we do? How many were identified this year? And then we have something measurable for the next year. You're right, that's a good
And
point to add.
a piece of that, Donnie, could be, okay, 60% were identified as not being dyslexic. So what did we do for the 60% that were struggling but weren't dyslexic?
So really the three then are what? The virtual, all-encompassing, however you guys want to make that happen, the special ed, and then leadership. And then however you want to put all of the other team
Leadership
in-
improvement.
involved in that,
all
right, to
together.
make that happen.
I still think we need a transition coordinator, when, Arthena had the position, the multicultural position, she targeted some of those kids and she took them around and showed them all the colleges. She showed them how to do bank accounts, she showed them about, ancestry and just programs that dealt with more hands-on with kids rather than the, instructional. I think the new position is more related to teaching, adults, and is it possible that part of that position could be more hands-on with kids? Do you know what I'm saying?
I hear what you're saying. Miss Dallas Lewis and her, first of all, the job description was the one that we revised with the help of this board and with the help of Miss Bonet and Mr. Rutherford, who are the affected communities. And when Miss Tanya Dallas Lewis did an hour-long special presentation on the cultural ambassadors and the role of the Cultural Unity Committee and the work that they're doing in the schools, one of the things that we're trying to emphasize is I can certainly stop right now and I can go out to school A and I can pull you out and have a conversation with you and I've affected one life. Or I can pull one person from every one of the schools and I can train them and I can say, this is your responsibility and this is how you address these issues. And we have to make sure what we're trying to do is to be more proactive about the entire system taking a level of responsibility for underrepresented populations, not let someone come in from the outside and say, let me help you. And again, admirable work. It's just that instead of this person in this position having to go around on the backside and pull these kids that didn't get everything they needed from the system and help walk them through it, change the system. What I hear you guys saying is change the system, and so that's the focus. The focus is action. The focus is the work with the people who are in the schools that we need to change.
I agree.
And that's where we really had a big push and a big focus, and hiring Tanya Dallas Lewis was because she was on board with that and that was her focus, so.
Well, maybe somebody at the high school could serve as a transition coordinator, or you could match teachers as volunteers, to pair up with seniors to make sure that, they have help filling out their applications. Like a one-on-one mentor
When you say applications, you're talking about FAFSA applications?
college or, trade school, just some, as soon as, by the time they hit high school, they should be paired with an adult who's looking out for their best interest. If the counselors can't handle it, which they, they're so busy, then, maybe some of the employees could serve as mentors. And then Ms. Lewis could train them.
Mhm.
Before we move on from this, I just want to thank you because the number one goal about the virtual school capacity, 2 years ago when we started that program, a couple of us cringed when you told us you were limiting it to 10 students.
I'm sure you remember that.
And, you told us we were gonna do it slowly and do it right, and then we were gonna grow it by a few more students the next year. And
That was last year.
Congratulations. Congratulations, you well exceeded that goal. That's very measurable. 50,000%.
so, yes, I just wanted to publicly thank you for exceeding our expectations.
Your low expectations.
And, we'll see what happens when we turn orange or red, how that works about everybody virtual, but, I think.
Praying for gold.
There you go.
Going for the gold.
And I
But
think though,
anyway.
like you said though, Dr. Gibson, with Ms. Dallas Lewis and changing the actual culture, changing the system, that's my point as far as our goals. Changing the system to say, these are areas that we know. So every person on the team, whether, even Miss White with our bus drivers and, whatnot, touching those special education populations, what is their goal to be able to feel more comfortable with that, or the medical needs that they get, or, whatever.
Mhm.
Everybody has a part. And so, where do you want your part to be measured, and how do you want to be a part of this goal? And making it happen.
Yes, ma'am.
And you've got a team to do it, so.
I do. I have
Yeah.
a great team. I have a fantastic team. I'm very blessed.
All right, any other discussion on the superintendent goals? Wow. All right. Moving on to item C, discussion and approval of section 3,000 and 4,000 in the policy updates.
The three remaining policies that we put on to move forward tonight are existing policies that just had some recent updates that are small. If we want to take the same approach with the discussion with the 1,000 policies, then I can offer that we table this and include it in the presentations for when we come back with 1,000, or we can discuss and move on them this evening.
So, can I, put that on the table anyway? Can we make a motion that, or can I make a motion that we, do that you add those to these if it's not something that we need right now for implementation for safety of students? That you feel like we can wait on that? Can we wait and have those with the other?
Yeah, they're changing code, so there's not anything that's really gonna matter by holding on this.
Okay, so I make a motion that we table that and add it to the other policies.
Second, Osmond.
Any discussion or question? And Ms. Lori, I just want to make sure, because these are policies dealing with definitions of weapons and also the use of epinephrine. Are these, policy changes that would be needed now that school has started? Or if we hold them off, then that's just even a bigger chunk to go through with policy 1,000?
Yeah, it's entirely up to you. That's why we had the personnel policies to put in place for the start of school, so that way we had all of those updated while staff and students were here. With this, especially the weapons policy, that is actually something that's included in legislation. So even though it's not updated in policy, If something were to happen, then, we could refer to law on that.
Okay, so Ms. Ogden and Mr. Osborne, your motion is to table this until next board meeting, is that correct?
Until when they go through policy 1,000, yeah.
Okay. So there's a motion on the table to table the approval of sections 3,000 and 4,000 in the policy updates. Any further question or discussion? All right, all in favor of tabling these policy updates?
So moved.
Opposed?
Oh,
I'm sorry, Mr. Cable, was that a opposition or vote for?
that was a no.
Okay. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of the meeting.
You have an executive session for legal now.
Oh, that's right. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, so there's a motion on the table to go into executive session for legal. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. And will there be action?
I do not know.
Okay, possible
Possible action, that's dependent upon the board, possible action.